Hello, everyone. Here we are for week 3 power rankings for the VDL-V Create. With me here is Miss Mag. Say hi, Miss Mag.
What's up, y'all? How you doing?
With that, I guess we can get straight into the power rankings. So we'll start with what happened in the last week and kind of go over each individual matches. The first match was the Rolled Gold Pretzels and the Welsh Waylords that ended up actually occurring today. So spoilers if you haven't watched it yet, and we're going to talk about it. So I guess I'll start. This was a really close set. Um, the match was very focused on basically a match of speed control. It was very focused on Goomies, Noivern setting up Tailwind and setting up the sun to counteract the rain. On The Matrix was setting up, and Matrix also had Tailwind with a Choice Scarf Pelipper, which ended up speed tiding the Noivern. So there was a very interesting dynamic there, where where it was kind of Gumi could set up Tailwind, but possibly the Pelipper was a little bit faster. Um, just depending on the random rolls of that. It ended up, game one went to Gumi, and the Matrix, I think, adjusted very well, identifying their key Pokemon, and I think kind of was able to get into good position games 2 and 3 by, saving, making good switches and making sure to not lose some of their important pieces. And I think it ended up going down to game 3 came down to basically Gumi not protecting an Islago in front of a Seismitoad in the rain because they were expecting, a read. So what are your thoughts of the set?
I would definitely agree with a lot of that. I also thought it was a really close set, and myself having just come from playing Gumi and the Pretzels in the previous week, I saw very similar sort of dynamics from Matrix that even I also had to employ. And Matrix did not do so well game one, I will admit. Gumi kind of got the jump on him with the speed control, and then the Nihiligo, I believe, in the Aegislash basically cleaned his clock after that. But his adjustments game two, and especially in that game three with those smart switches, really, really paid off. And from Gumi's perspective, it really did come down to like that 50-50 again, similar to when he faced me in week two. It's like, do I protect here? Do I go for an offensive move expecting a switch? And I mean, I like games that, come down to that level of positioning between both coaches. So it was well played by both.
Yeah, definitely a fun match, and definitely nice that we're able to include it on this week's power ranking. But I guess with that, we can go up to the next match, which happens to be your match against the Somerville Scraggies, which was another close 3 game set. So, what were your thoughts on the match?
Um, well, the first thought is I will not deny that I am very happy to get my first win of the season. It has not been an easy season for me and the Marauders at all. And even going into this match, I have to say it was not easy prepping for certain threats that the Scraggies have. Like they had like a Dug Trio, which I was very certain would come. Surprisingly, did not come. They have the Prim and the Cinderace, and then this just very annoying thing called Purloin, which just runs a lot of interference. But I did the best I could to kind of mitigate all of those threats. I realized that Regieleki is very good into what the Scraggies have, as long as Dugtrio is really kind of dealt with. So I just kind of position my team to deal with Dugtrio, and then if I need to have Aleki in the back to like clean up, that's fine. If he doesn't bring it, which he ended up not doing, I can be a little bit more aggressive and just lead Aleki outright. With some screen support from my new friend Morgrim, which I picked up before week three.
Oh yeah,
But yeah, it definitely came down to some reads, and not really much in the hacks department. I definitely forgot about Purloin getting Encore in game one, and that kind of screwed me over really nicely.
So one thing I think is noteworthy is in your video title and what you're saying. Yeah, I think you gave a lot more credit to Reggie or Lucky than it deserved. I think your real MVP was unquestionably Morgrim. That Pokemon did so much work getting speed control for your entire team. Like obviously Reggie or Lucky did do a reasonable amount of work. I'm not saying it didn't, but like the increased bulk on the screens and the thunder waves were I think the big difference in deciding the game. Being able to paralyze the Scarf Cinderace, making it not nearly as big of a threat was a huge deal. Being able to survive a couple of rolls that I think were pretty close, even with the screens up, I definitely think was the big turning factor. Even though they did have Brick, I think it still did a lot of work.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's why I made sure on my thumbnail to make sure they were kind of sharing the stage together because Morgrim was a big help, and I would say the biggest value that Morgrim actually brought was fast fake out because Proline is annoying, but it's also pretty slow relative to like the rest of my team. And the only other fake out user I had was Hitmonchan, which I did not want to bring to this match. So it was nice to be able to have that value to guarantee like I can fake out Portline and then I can kind of deal with the partner.
Yeah, and there's definitely I think the interesting situation where you both had prankster mons that were dark, so you couldn't target each other's mons, which I think is a really big deal. But I think it favored you because you had screens as some of your prankster moves, which I think was a big benefit to in like the prankster war.
Right.
Uh,
I will also say that I think the sucker punch on the port line was a really smart bring by Tyler, just to like pick off stuff that I might have that is low on health. I wasn't expecting it in game one, and had he not revealed it in game one, I might have actually played the other two games quite differently, and I might not have won. Actually, that kind of came into effect.
well, definitely it was an interesting match. It was another really close one. I think the Scraggies have had exclusively 2-1 sets this entire season, so they've just been consistently incredibly close sets. But definitely a fun one. But with that, I guess we can go to the next one, which is the Bulky Dragons and the South Croydon Sars. So the Sars won 2-0, and I don't recall. I think there was only a video of the first game of the set, if I recall correctly. I don't know why there wasn't a video of the second one, or at least I didn't see the video of the second one. So the first game was a doozy. It was very interesting. So the Dragons did a Latios or Latias, I mean, used the ability. I can't remember the move, but it was able to switch its typing with the Klefki. So it became a Steel Fairy Pokemon with Levitate, meaning it has exactly one weakness after that combination, and then it had Calm 9, Recovery, and just damage output. And it became a really hard wall for the SARS to beat, and so the SARS kind of got in a position where their only real damage into it was Dracovish with Vicious Rend. However, the dragons kept on kind of lowering its attack over and over again with Intimidate and I want to say Baby Doll Eyes, but I can't, but I'm not exactly sure. I think it was something else if in addition to Intimidate, and the yeah, and so they just kind of were being able to lower its attack just enough so that the Latias was able to kind of break through and finally eventually kill the Dracovish, but it took so long for them to do that that the game ended up coming down to timer. And even though I think the Dragons win that game if they have one or two more turns, they ended up losing based on the amount of HP left on both Pokemon's side.
Yeah, it was that was a crazy game for game one of us said I thought that was probably one of the more interesting game ones we've had in this whole week. Like the reflect type was, in my opinion, I didn't even remember that Latias even got that move, so I thought it was a very clever strategy, especially if you're watching, the Saurus how they played in the last couple of weeks. They're kind of a bit of a slow marathon type team. So, Bulky Dragons definitely came prepared for that. But it's like you said, the management of the time and the Sora's ability to kind of still stall out the stall really favored them this week.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. So do you see or able to see the stats on game two? I don't think I saw the. Well, I know I didn't watch it, but I
I
don't.
don't think there was a video. I just remember looking at either like a battle. I think there was a battle report for it. that was the only portion that I at least saw. Yeah, there was a battle report for it. I don't think there was a second game recorded, and it just seemed like the Sores seemed like more of an, I guess, an offensive set with the Sylveon and the Excelgor picking up some big kills.
Okay. Well, definitely that first game was one of the most interesting games I think we've seen this season. But definitely sad to see that it only went 2 games, and also the Dragons kind of lost a game that looked like they were in position to win. But it happens. With that, I guess we can go to the next game, which is the Arcanines versus the Blazikens, which was another 3-game set. So, what are your thoughts on this?
So I actually watched this game from both perspectives. This set was probably like it just was like razor thin. I think the difference between who won and who lost. It was such a close set, and I think the downfall of the Blazikens in particular came down to that game 3 where the Togekiss had to choose what it was going to be Scarf locked into versus I believe it was Berserker and I think Clawitzer was
Yeah.
out at the time. And I remember watching specifically from M's perspective, I was like, please just click Heat Wave. Like you have the Grassy Glide. Even if, you lose your terrain, like just click Heat Wave. And, ended up that they ended up clicking I believe it was Dazzling Gleam trying to get that super luck crit and it just didn't really pan out. And eventually they unfortunately lost because they didn't have enough damage on the Berserker for the Thwacky to finish it off. And I was just like, whew, such a close set. But I also have to give it props to Dan because he played that very well. He had some very nice tech, and he also had some really smart switches to kind of really protect that uh, dragon, that Dragapult, Urshifu, and Liepard, kind of all weak to Fairy Core. So I really like how he came prepped for this match.
Well, yeah, I think the big one, yeah. So like the Arcanines kind of just not the Arcanines, the Blazikens just kind of swept game 1 with the Scarf Togekiss, and that just kind of dominated, and they got a very easy game 1. And then the Arcanines definitely adjusted very well. I think they realized how important Berserker was, and their entire game plan kind of revolved around making sure it was in favorable position and able to get into, and able to get a spot to be able to get rid of the Togekiss. And I think they realized that their Crobat was a lot more important, not only as like a fairy resist, but also Tailwind to be able to deal with the Scarf on the Togekiss. And I agree, it was definitely a very interesting set. I think the Arcanines definitely adjusted very well. But like we said, like the Blazikens were game 3 we're in a position where if they got one crit with super luck, so it's not bad odds, or maybe clicked Heat Wave, they probably win the set, which definitely sad because they were kind of razor thin margin on being able to get their first win.
Yeah, it really just came down to, like you said, at that game 3, they needed to get enough damage on something to basically kind of force like a 2v1 or at least force a 1v1 where they had the health advantage. And unfortunately that didn't happen, but I also agree that the Arcanines adjusted really well, and I think they showcased that you can't just bring really strong fairy types against their sort of weak to fairy trio, some of their top picks, and not expect to have to deal with some resistance because even just Dragapult having Thunderbolt and Chloritzer having Ice Beam to exploit the non-fairy typing of the Togekiss very much came in handy.
Mm-hmm. I guess with that, we can go to the next game, which happened to be my game against the Trixie Tricos. This was a smacking. I got completely crushed game 1. Game 2, I think I also got pretty crushed, but I think I definitely had some opportunities which I think I could have played a little bit better to maybe have gotten myself out there, but it definitely did not go great. I think the big one is just I don't have a I did not with my team composition I don't have a great way to deal with the Lunatone Raichu lead because I don't have any because I don't have a way to one shot Lunatone consistently, and they had Mental Herb on the Lunatone, so I couldn't taunt it. And so basically that's the long and the short of it. The only way I could theoretically have done it would be like imprison plus Whirlwind, but I didn't want to bring some Pokemon that were bad into the matchup that had just because they had Whirlwind. Because my only Whirlwind one is actually Skarmory, I believe. So definitely did not go great. I think it is kind of very similar to the Dan matchup, but I think a little bit more convincing in favor of my opponent, where they definitely were able to get pretty early Trick Room, and then I kind of lost to that.
Yeah, it was a tough road for you just even from the beginning. Like the Lunatone and Raichu, like you said, it was very powerful. But even I think in some ways, like barring that you could have actually gotten rid of Lunatone, I think the Caparaja in the back also can give your team a bit of contention with just very strong hits. And once it's got the speed control going and possibly even having Assault Vest for some of your more tankier stuff. Uh, the feel bad moment for me was the poor Halusha got his unburdened boost under Trick Room just because I believe Otto wanted to conserve the Raichu, I think, and the Feeny came in instead, which proc the seed, and I was just like, wow, yeah, this this isn't gonna end very well. But I think overall, like it's a weak point of your team, and I think you knew that kind of coming into this match, and not gonna spoil the PR section, but I think you made some wise adjustments given this match result.
Well, yeah, like I said, I definitely think I could have probably done a little better with some, namely, different Pokemon in Game Two and a little bit different plays that I possibly could have gotten Game Two win. But most my main way to kind of prevent it was just hoping for some luck in some of these plays, and I ended up not getting that. So, anyways, I guess with that we can head off to Game Three, which is Rebellion versus the Pangorials. Rebellion had a nice 2-0 win. I guess what are your thoughts of the match?
I think this was a very. It was not only a dominant win for Rebellion and Lucian overall. I think it was also a very showcasing win for what Lucian's team can really do. I believe this was, or I might be actually getting this confused with the current week four. But oh, you know what? I am.
Okay,
I think this was
this week this was Choice Scarf, Suicune,
this
uh,
was the free stuff, right?
the free stuff
Okay.
with the Tri Attack on the Serene Grace Togetic. Um, those are some of the noteworthy aspects of it.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm thinking about his week four. Okay, never mind. But yeah, I think in this case, Lucian just kind of doing what Lucian does. Like a little bit of luck goes a long way, and I do remember there was that, like you said, that Serene Gaze Tri Attack, freeze hacks, and I think Mister Rhyme kind of just like swept most of what the Fangorials actually tried to field. Um, but yeah, I mean, sometimes you just really get lucky or you get unlucky. It really depends on your perspective, I suppose. But I think I think Rebellion's needed this win. I think it in some ways solidified a little bit of their confidence going forward with their draft, taking down one of our higher ranked teams.
Well, yeah, I think the big one is I think though people like making fun of them, like all three of the dogs are individually very powerful Pokemon. And this game, I think, showed just how powerful and how versatile Suicune can be because, unlike it being a support set like it normally was, it was a very much of an offensive threat with Suicune, and it did a lot of work just as an offensive threat with Choice Scarf. And similarly, I'm sure we'll see and or have seen some of their other, of those other, and so that core by itself is just a very powerful core. And in addition to that, I think that they played well. They had a little bit of luck. I think game two, but game one they definitely had a very convincing game one win.
Yeah, no, I can agree with those things in a lot of ways. I clearly don't remember the match as well as I thought I did at first, but yeah, no, the dogs are definitely individually very strong, and then the resilience against being faked out and flinched in general is very powerful, which kind of lets Rebellion dictate what they want to do each turn.
Mm-hmm. And then, but yeah. So anything else about this game before we move on?
I guess next time to wear a coat or something. Lucian in the freeze hacks is very, very strong.
Yeah, back to back is though we didn't get to watch it, the week 2 match Rebellion versus the Blazikens had another freeze that I think ended up lasting like 4 or 5 turns if I recall.
Yeah, that poor Alolan Persian just never stood a chance, even with his fur coat.
Yeah, fur coat probably should make it not be able to get frozen, but apparently not. So, anyways, with that, I guess we can move on. Next up, we have the Beantown Binacles with the versus the Coffee and Smokers. The Smokers were able to get a 2-0 win, and I definitely think this was a very big win for them. As I think we mentioned in the previous PR, week one, their week 1 win, was very very strange to say the least, and we didn't even get to see them really play at all week 2 because there was no video. And so I think this is one of the first matches that, as a league, we are able to kind of see the Coffee and Smokers and see their strengths. And they played very well, I think, as coaching wise, and I think they prepped quite well as well. So what are your thoughts on the set?
So the first thing I want to say about this set in particular, I like what Trunks did this week. I really think he came with a very well-defined game plan, and I think he executed it very, very well. In particular, my favorite thing that he brought was this Lopunny set, which had Fake Out and Headbutt and Thunder Wave, and I think last move might have either been Charm or Baby Doll Eyes. Like he just brought it to be a nuisance and offer some extra speed control outside of he already brought Talonflame, so that was nice that he didn't have to lean on one direction of speed control. And then like Thunderwave Headbutt is just like it's free damage and it's a great sort of like I need to like roll the dice on flinching this mon really quickly, maybe disable it for a turn to get some advantage. I think that works out quite well. So I want to say that I also really like what the Binacles brought to this match. I thought their Vigavolt set, which I think it was Assault Vest in the end because I don't think we ever saw Protect coming from it, but I thought the Vigavolt set was very good at supporting the team with or without Trick Room up because it actually had Electro Web, which I think was just nice to sort of, even at the end of the turn, just get some powerful ship on the opponents because Vigavolt is like base 145 special attack and then also lower their speed. So, I like what both coaches came to this match with, but I definitely think like Smokers definitely came, saw, and conquered very well.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I definitely. Oh, yeah. The I don't know. The Smokers definitely. I feel like there's a lot of situations where they, you know, well, yeah, like they got. I think game 2 it was is they. I think they ended up getting 3 or 4 paralysis on the team with the Lopunny, and so there was just so many opportunities for full paralysis, and then with the headbutt with the flinch in addition to that, there were just so many opportunities for the Binacles to be in situations where they needed to just have lucky RNG because of being paralyzed and being hit with flinch moves. And like those support mons from them just did so much work that it was very, very tricky, especially because like the Binacles were struggling to deal enough damage to kill those mons because of the constant. I think Lopunny did have Baby Doll Eyes as well. Like I remember them losing a lot of damage. They had a lot of damage dropping attacks, or like a lot of damage reduction being occurred as well, which was making the damage output a little bit tricky. Um, and then yeah, but the game ended up being very grindy. The Binacles were also bringing for a lot of like more bulky Pokemon, and so it definitely was a long set with the um, you know, but kind of the coffers being able to be in Trick Room or out of Trick Room was a very good combination, and you know, and yeah, and definitely was very impressed with their performance. Um, and so definitely happy to see that. Like I said, the Smokers are definitely a coach that we didn't is they're new and we haven't really got to see them. I think perform as well as they could, or like get to see their strengths as a coach until this game really. So, anyways, with that, We can go to the next match, which is the Bashers versus the Helisopods. I'll start this one. Uh, I think this one was rage-inducing. By according to the coach of the Helisopods, the Bashers had the Gravity Sing combination with Clefable. Clefable did not have Follow Me. It was just I think Protect, Gravity, Sing, and then Moonblast. And it was a very interesting set overall. I think the Bashers ended up having to get a game two. I think they were in a position where I think they were slightly disadvantaged, and they got a non-gravity boosted Sing to kind of clinch it. There was a lot of back and forth and a lot of I think a lot of interesting plays. I think overall it was I think the Bashers kind of what they thought was going to be good was definitely different than what ended up being very good in the matchup. But it was definitely a fun match to watch. So, what are your thoughts on the match?
Oh boy, all I can say about this one is I think after everything that the Helisopod Warriors and Rex have been through, like his moms are gonna have like glasses and earmuffs. Like I, I'm not sure how much more hacks this man can really take. But I will also say that like I think the Sing Gravity combination again was a very smart bring by the Bolden Bashers. I think Goomer, similar to Gert in a way, just recognizing that like Warriors have a lot of inaccurate moves, and while Gravity does increase the power of those moves, if you stack the Gravity with a lot of other disabling type of statuses like Sing, or if you roll out Thunderwave and stuff, it really kind of is you're able to mitigate that. And the Bashers came with like a really bulky team, like to really center it around this sort of Sing strategy in some ways. It almost felt like an afterthought. Like they had their Regirock, they had their Appleton, Clefable, Uxie was there, I believe.
Yeah,
I'm forgetting the other two members of the team, but
Weavile was one.
Weavile, yeah, Weavile, and I'm not sure what the sixth one is.
I, I don't think I don't think they brought it. But
Yeah, but they played a very like sort of definitive thought out game plan, and I would say the Holistic Warriors is I'd say they're mostly hyper offense with a lot of what they like to bring. So Bashers matched that perfectly, and the Sings were just the icing on the cake, honestly.
well, yeah, I think the Bashers have definitely been leaning to their bulky side this season, and it's been working out pretty well for them. The gravity, not only with the Sing, it also comboed pretty well with the fact that the Helisopods have Rotom Heat, and so with gravity, you can hit it with 4 times super effective ground coverage. And in addition to that, with the Weavile that we mentioned, Triple Axle gets 100% accurate in gravity as well. And so, like, it's not like it was just for the, you know, 90% accurate Sings. There were other reasons why gravity was a good call this week. And it just happened that Sing, in addition to gravity, was the big thing that ended up working out the most. Because the other ones were kind of less noteworthy or less rage-inducing, for lack of a better word.
Yes, I did actually forget about the Rotom Heat and the high horsepower. Yes, good point. Goomer did bring that up to make his from his perspective, like you were saying, it wasn't just about hey, I can click 91% accuracy sleep. It was this is what this move brings to my team and my matchup, and I get to click 91% accuracy Sing. Although I'm also inclined to think that um, possibly we might have seen a game three. In my opinion, I think if Aggron could have just got like a little bit more damage on either the Clef or I guess the Appleton that switched in for the Clef.
Oh yeah,
Because I think even with the Sings kind of crippling him, the Uxie Encore really just kind of did him in. So he really needed more damage on the board.
yeah. No, it was definitely very close. There's definitely a couple rolls I think could have made that get to game three, but definitely a good win for the Bashers, and another week of a little bit infuriating loss on the Hlistlopod side, but With that, I guess we can go to our next match, which is the Gurchens versus the Camerups. So the Camerups, after having their sad week 1 loss, I'll say that they've been doing very impressive, getting their second win in a row, and not only that, they got a nice 2-0 win against the Georgia Gurchens. So what are your thoughts on this set?
I'll say the same thing I said last week. I like what Cambridge did here. I absolutely like how they came to this matchup. They kind of saw the weak points in the Gurchens, who were ranked very high, mind you, in PRs from the earlier weeks. I think we're starting to really see more of like how the Gurchens can kind of be sort of attacked in sort of different ways. And I believe the star for the Camerups was their Arachnid with Choice Band, and it was just throwing liquidation out like it was candy. With that water bubble, basically giving it what is, I guess, what would that even be, like ×3 multiplier with the Choice Band? Like that's a lot of damage even into resisted mons. So so yeah, definitely well played by Cambridge.
Oh yeah, definitely was a fun set with I think um, kind of being in a situation where it's very. I think game 1 was very trick room oriented, and game 2 it was less so. Um, the Arachnid has definitely been showing to be one of the key mons in the Camerups team. It has been doing a lot of work, and even the loss that they had, but pretty much every game they've brought it. The Gurchens have had I think had a little bit of difficulties dealing with some of the specific um, setups for the Camerups, but definitely was a fairly impressive win on the Camerups, and definitely showing their strength after a pretty demoralizing week 1 loss. Just I think is probably what I would say.
That's a fair way to put it, I would say as well.
Any other thoughts on the set?
I just gotta say that, even though the Gurchens lost this one 0-2, back to back, because they also lost, I believe, the last week 0-2, I still think their team has potential, and I think they can continue to bounce back. And I think for Cambridge, this really is just the wind up, like you said, after that demoralizing week 1, like they're fired up, they're ready to roll. So it'll be interesting to see how they go for the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm. I guess with that, we can go to the next match, which is the Pogging Porygons versus the MK Mimikyus. Pogging Porygons have their second consecutive win. They're looking nice. After I think they were ranked 24th going in our week 1 power rankings, and they've had a 2-game win streak since then with a nice 2-0 win against the Mimikyus this week. So what were your thoughts on this set?
I also want to say that I like what OC Frey and the Porygons are doing, kind of similar to Cambridge, who started out this season as some of our lower ranked teams. These coaches are really showcasing like what their teams can do, and I love to see that. Especially, it's easy to look at a team on paper and be like, well, what the heck is this supposed to do? Or you don't have any mons above 100 speed, and the Porygons are really showcasing that, hey, we can still play, we can still do what we need to do to get wins. And I think against the Mimikyus, they really, really showcase their strength. I believe the Scarf Mon of Choice, I always love to joke with their team that you're basically playing a game of Where's the Choice Scarf. I think their Choice Scarf this week was a Blastoise with Water Spout that was just chipping away at the Mimikyus while the other members kind of just cleaned it up, if I'm recalling correctly.
Yep, that's
Yep.
right.
Okay. Yeah. So, and I think that was a good bring. I don't know how many water resists the Mimikyus have. I think it might just be the Golosopod and the Altaria, which are not necessarily good brings into the rest of what OC Frey has. So, yeah, good win.
Yeah, no. So one of the big things I took away from this set is, so the Bogging Porgons are a returning coach. I watched them a little bit this last season, but it's definitely one of the matches that I definitely leaving the set. I was like, man, the Porgons are actually a good coach. They actually coach, like they played quite well. definitely one of the more impressive matches I saw from them. Based on how they played specifically, I was very impressed with a lot of their, a lot of their like decision making and a lot of how um, how they played overall. So that's definitely something I wanted to to mention to the Porygon specifically is how I was impressed with how you played. Let's see. Going into the set though, or like the specifics, I was very impressed with the Bronzong Dragalge set. I think it did a lot of work. Dragalge doesn't seem like it's going to be like the best Pokemon of their team, but getting into Trick Room, setting it up with its weakness policy and Bulldoze, lowering its speed was huge. The Bronzong did so much work. They had the expanding force on the Bronzong to abuse the terrain from the Mimikyus. But overall, like they definitely were able to position very well, get in positions where they could set up Trick Room or you abuse the Scarf like we saw, like we mentioned. But I was very impressed with their play as a whole. Anything else about this set?
It's kind of similar to what I said about Cambridge. I think for the Porygons, like again, this is kind of the wind up. You start out with that 0-2 in week one, and then we get back to back wins. You were ranked 24th out of the whole league. Like we're seeing a lot of the fire, and you yourself just pointed out like coach elements of what impressed you, not even just about the gameplay itself. So I think this is going to be another team to watch to see how they do for the rest of the season.
Yeah, definitely excited to see when coaches start to step their game up and show their skill. With that, we can move on to the next match, which was the Tyranitar Sauces versus the Tendo Melmetals. I'm going to start off with this one. This was such an interesting set. The Tyranitar Sauces had the cool strategy of weakness policy, what? Oh my gosh, how do you say it?
Cresselia.
Cresselia. That's the word. Yes, Cresselia. My bad. Weakness policy, Cresselia, throwing with thunderous, flinging a key berry into the Cresselia to activate its own weakness policy and giving it a defense boost. After that, doing Calm Minds to get special defense boost, and then using Store Power to just rip through the Melmetals team. So the Melmetals had no dark Pokemon, so Cresselia was able to kill anything in theory with the stored power, and that basically just completely caught the Melmetals off game one. And I think pretty much the Cresselia just kind of swept game one. Game two, the Melmetals adjusted very well into dealing with the Cresselia. The best they could. They led with their more resistant Pokemon or the Pokemon that could do more damage into it. But the Cresselia having rest and sleep talk just kind of made it really hard, and the game ended up and the Melmetals were getting very close to being able to kind of stall them out of the game as there's because I think at some point it might have been like maybe like 60% of the way through the game timer. I think the Melmetals had 0 total damage dealt to their team. It was something crazy like that, and so I think they basically were doing really well at pressuring the Cresselia, making it continuously having to sleep, and then making the Sauces have to continuously bring in their Torracat to intimidate and parting shot and things like that. And so they were doing very well, but the Cresselia just ended up being too much to handle and just kind of was able to I think get one kill, and then that kind of snowballed until I think the game ended up coming down to timer, but or maybe they ended up getting the kill. It was very close if it was not come down to timer. Anyways, what was your thoughts on the set?
Yeah, the fling weakness policy, Cresselia, absolutely my favorite set I saw this week. I thought it was so perfect for a team like the Melmetals, which has a lot of different flexibility in what modes you could run. Like he has the sand mode, he has the wheezing gigas mode, and I think the Thunderous Cresselia lead was a very good middle ground into actually both of those modes, depending on what was brought, even as like the Trick Room mode. So I loved it. I thought it worked out perfectly, and he executed it perfectly. I also thought, like you said, the Melmeadows did a really good job doing the best they could in the game two scenario of trying to bounce back. But I'm pretty sure I think at least one of their games came down to timers. I think it was the second one. Otherwise, we probably would have seen a game three. So I think it was just really about like forcing the Cresselia to be pressured so that it can't be doing damage, but at the same time, because the sauces have the Torracat basically weakening most of what you're bringing to the table, and I think the Melmeadows have almost exclusively all physical attackers anyway, minus maybe like a few mons like Celesteela and Jellicent. So it was just kind of like a perfect storm for the sauces to kind of be able to eke out a win amongst that that cycling.
Yeah. Anything else about the set that you want to mention?
Congratulations to Saki for being one of two undefeated teams. That is a pretty big accomplishment. This has been a really tight season so far, and I'll be curious to see how long the streak lasts.
Yeah.
I really like his team.
Oh yeah, definitely. So with that, we can go to the final match of the week, which was the Drowsy Dracozolt versus the Old English Ice Cubes, where the Dracozolt got a close 2-1 win with and getting their first win of the season. So what was your thoughts of the set?
So my first thought was it was very, very nice to see Wigglytuff actually doing work for another coach. I was very happy to see it shine in this match with Masenko and his Dragololds. Also happy, that it also contributed to him and his team getting his first win. Yay for them. But the Wigglytuff and the Wobbuffet was quite an interesting pairing, I will say the most part. And I think what is so even more fascinating about this match, besides the mons on paper, is these coaches more or less have similar play styles. They love to draft bulky mons. They love to play very slow, methodical grind games. And I think we really see this not only in the 2-1 result, but I believe it was like the game. I forget which set was basically stalled out by like Wiggs and Wobbuffet specifically. I think it might have been the first one.
Well, no. So game one was not Wiggs and Wobbuffet, but it was Wiggs and I can't remember. So it was Melodic, Wigglytuff, and then a choice scarfed crap, what's something with Earthquake. I'm drawing a blank. But yeah, it came down to just Wigglytuff wish passing over and over again to make sure that Melodic couldn't kill either of the mons, and then so like wishing to heal itself, wishing passing it with the ally switch, and it ended up coming down to timer, I believe. I can't remember what was the other Pokemon. Do you remember what it was? It wasn't. I know it wasn't Wiggly or they didn't bring Wobbuffet until game 2.
Huh. Earthquake. Let me see if I can find it, because I would be very curious if
I'm drawing a blank.
Because I'm also drawing a blank. Oh, it was Goodra. Yeah, it was
Goodra.
Scarf Goodra.
Yeah,
physical Scarf Goodra. Yeah.
There we go. Yes. So it was Goodra, Wigglytuff, and that stalled out the game with, well, kind of Melodic having recovery and then wish passing, and yeah, Wigglytuff did a lot of work. Unlike you though, I'm gonna say it. I definitely feel like the Wobbuffet felt very memey. It it did not seem like it was the best set. I definitely think that I think the Dragozolts probably lost because they brought Wobbuffet over another mon in game 2. That's how I interpreted it and how I saw the set.
Mm-hmm.
And then game 3, I think the very close still, but I definitely think Wigglytuff did a lot of work. I'm sure a lot of people who hate Ally Switch are going to say that the Wigglytuff set was terrible, but its main reason for Ally Switch was more to pass the wishes to heal its own allies. Obviously the Ally Switch also can help with random, 50-50 reads, but that was the main reason. So just for any haters of Ally Switch, that is a legitimate strategy this week. Well, it's always a legitimate strategy, but it was even more so this week.
Yeah, I mean, In some ways, though, I'm a little bit inclined to disagree with you with the ally switch causing the 50-50 reads on the Wigglytuff specifically because in some ways, based on how you're dealing damage to Masenko's Pokemon, if you know the Wigglytuff actually has Wish and ally switch, you can make a little bit, I would say, more leveraged decisions on what might happen in terms of like if the Wigglytuff's partner is obviously very low and they've just clicked Wish, you can probably reasonably assume that they will click Ally Switch in the following turn, unless they want to switch or something. So I like that it is like you said, I guess a more legitimate strategy. I mean, I'm just happy to see Wigglytuff doing well because it wasn't working for me, and I tried that same strategy during my first week, but it's nice to see it shine on a team where it is really able to shine.
Yeah. I guess with that we can. That's the end. Unless you have anything else you want to say about any this match or any of the other ones before we go to our ranks.
I just think overall this was like a really good week as we sort of approach like the halfway point. We have two teams picking up their first win of the season, myself and the Dracozolts, and we wanted the Blazikens and them to join us, but I think week 4 will be their week as we see it's getting tight. It's getting to be a really tight race.
Mm-hmm. And oh yeah, and then before we go to the rankings, one thing that's noteworthy is that this week there was also a lot of transactions, a lot of teams changed up, and I think a lot of like 2-1 and 1-2 and 0-3 teams definitely decided to make some trades to try to get a little bit better leaning towards this, kind of the rest of the season. So, anyways, let's start with the rankings. Number 25 or 24 is the Brisbane Blazikens. So obviously they're the only 0-3 team, so I think that's the main reason they're 24th. Before I get pass it to you, we'll note that they have true transactions. They picked up Buzzwole, which is a team favorite. They've drafted it twice previously, and then they picked up Duraludon, which previously was on Rebellion and Rebellion, and so they made a couple of transactions. I can't remember what they dropped. So maybe you recall, but so what are your thoughts about them being 24th?
I agree. I think just at this point in the season, the record really has to speak to why they're ranked 24th because I still think their team is pretty solid, even with the changes, especially knowing that the Buzzwole is a comfort pick for them, which means they know how to use it well. So you got to look forward to what they'll do with it in upcoming weeks. They ended up dropping the Magmortar they had for the Duraludon in Tier 3, and then they traded the Latios away for the Buzzwole, just to clear that up. It's interesting actually not seeing this team with a fire type anymore, but I'm not sure that they need it per se, or maybe they will use one more trade and I don't know, maybe trade off the Phalanx or something because you have the duplicate fighting type now, which is a little unnecessary in some ways. So maybe.
I think they did. They do have a trade that's currently queued in the Discord. I can't recall what it is, but I think it was the Mawile that they might be dropping for the following week.
Oh, spice. So I guess we'll have some more trades to update for next week.
But yeah, definitely. Blazikens, you're a great team. We've seen you do a lot of work in the past, but yeah, you're the only 0-3 team. So sorry, you're 24th. Continuing on, we have number 23, which is the Tendo Melmetals. So yeah, the Melmetals had a pretty tough loss to Sakimoto, but it's not not too sad of a loss given the fact that Sakimoto is the one of the 2-3-0 teams, so definitely one of the better teams in the league. But yeah. So what are your thoughts of them being 23rd?
I think this is about where they fall, just kind of based on record and also just kind of based on team comp a little bit. I'd be interested to see if Kirky and his Melmetal's are considering some trades. I know there's some mons we haven't really seen. Like we have not seen that Sea Urchin. I think it's been on roster almost every week. But I think it's actually come to a game.
Yeah, I think they brought Pikamiku all 3 games, and it has yet to see the battlefield. I don't know. Like I said, I still am not a big fan of that just on their team in the general sense. I definitely think that their Celestial did a lot of work in this last week, and I think the previous weeks. You know, their Regigigas and Weezing is still yet to be impressive, which is one of the things I was concerned going into the season because historically that combo has not been super great. Um,
Right.
and so it has yet to kind of do anything too impressive for, in my opinion, for me. And then I don't think we've seen the Dracozolt at all, and so it's definitely been, you know, definitely been very Jellicent and Celesteela and Regigigas focused so far.
Yeah, I mean, with all the movement, like you said before we started this about the trades, I'd be curious to see now that, some teams have clearly either finished their 4 trades or are basically on 1 or 2 trades remaining. I'd be curious to see what they do in the later part of the season if they decide to switch some things up.
Mm-hmm. So with that, let's go up to number 22, which is the Drowsy Dracozolts. The Dracozolts got their first win this week, and it was a really nice win, but very close nonetheless. And with their new pickup from last week, Wigglytuff and Wobbuffet, they namely Wigglytuff, they had a very good win with that. I think they also brought Rotom, but I don't think it did as nearly as much work as as Wigglytuff did.
Yeah, I gotta say that I think since we know this is one of the teams that cannot do any more trades for the rest of the season, they're capped. I think the trades did Masenko a world of good, mainly for his type of playstyle. Like this looks like a very Masenko team, and I think that we're gonna be seeing a lot more about what this team can do tech wise to really conquer the rest of the opposition. I know you yourself was not super impressed by the Wobbuffet, but we might see other ways in which that it supports the rest of the teammates, as Shadow Tag is still a very powerful ability, even if it is just on Wobbuffet.
Well, like we saw, the first 2 weeks they didn't bring Gothitelle at all, and then I think the reason they got rid of Gothitelle was because they didn't think they were going to use it even for this week. And so I think it's fair because Rotom Wash immediately did work. I think, and then Wigglytuff immediately did work. So I definitely think those trades were very impactful. You know, even though I might not be the biggest fan of Wobbuffet, I think the fact that you picked up a tier 1 that you're more likely to use and a tier 4 that you're more likely to use or that's notably better, I think that's a win, even if your tier 5 is not the best.
Yeah, that's fair. And even the Mr. Mime that he picked up earlier in, I believe, like week 2 has been, doing its part. So kind of everything's kind of like working together. In a way,
Mm-hmm.
he kind of split the Gothitelle into, he got a nice offensive package and support package in the Rotom Wash, and he got 2 lower tier mons that basically fulfilled, or 3 lower tier mons that basically fulfill all the roles Gothitelle could even do: Shadow Tag, Frisk, Fake Out, Trick Room, Helping Hand. Like he's kind of got it, Ally Switch. He's kind of got it all in.
and
He got it in
and
3 months.
and competitive on Wigglytuff too, in case you want
And competitive. Like he's got budget Gothitelle. He's just split it into 3 different mons.
to. Yeah, pretty much.
And Rotom Wash looks great on a rain team, like rain
Yeah.
boosted hydro pumps. Yeah,
And then 100% accurate thunders. Yeah, no, definitely.
it's great. I can't wait to see how he goes forward in the latter half of the season with this team.
Yeah, no, definitely a big fan of the trades, and we kind of saw them with their most recent trades immediately get a win and immediately have a lot nicer, a lot cleaner games as well. So with that, we go up to number 21, which I believe, yes, is myself. Yeah, I think I was pretty high. I think I was probably overranked last week, and I think I definitely fell down to probably closer to where I should be. Maybe I should have even been one lower. I had a pretty bad loss this week, in my opinion. I also made one trade. I got rid of my oh my, whatever, the flying
Emolga.
squirrel. Yeah, Moga. Thank you. I traded a Moga and I to the the Gurchens for their gold bat. So I basically realized, I looked at the rest of my season and I came to the realization that I probably wasn't going to use a Moga in any of those matches. And so I thought Amoga was probably something I should get rid of, since I already have an electric flying Pokemon that has Volt Absorb and Thunderous Therian, which is a lot better. And the only reason I'd probably use it is for basically some sort of like double discharge strategy, you know. And so I could get and I could like choice scarf discharge with Thunderous, and then Emolga gets motor drive to increase its speed, and then you get super fast double discharge. Realized that that was likely not going to happen, and so I picked up Golbat for inner focus, and also just um, you know, a reasonably bulky mon. It also, you know, has some nice things for it, like taunt and whirlwind. You know, kind of a way to kind of you know, deal with a little bit of fake out pressure, but also, you know, also having some solid support moves and being a reasonably bulky mon with Eviolite. But definitely had a bad loss, and hopefully to turn that around. Any thoughts about me, my team, my trade, or where I'm ranked?
I think that in spite of the bad loss, I guess for me personally, I would say you're ranked appropriately. Maybe you could go, I honestly think you could probably go like 20, maybe even 19, because I think a bad loss to a matchup that, in my opinion, wasn't super favorable from the jump and against, you know, one of our higher up teams, I think can sort of mitigate that. But the trade, I think, was perfect for you. And I know we had a lot of discussion about, you know, you possibly picking up Delibird for actual fake out pressure, but I think your rationale for why you chose the gold bat actually served your team a lot better because of you get the inner focus, the quick guard, and you get the tools to really deal with your, you know, your toughest, I guess, matchup on paper, which is probably Trick Room. You know, with the whirlwinds, which I didn't even remember Goldbat got until you just mentioned it. You get the whirlwind, you even get haze. So I think it'll do, and you also get another. I think I would assume it's slightly bulkier than Scyther, but I could be completely wrong. But you get another option for like an EVLA user, which I think is great. Even though you don't have the speed tier of Crobat, and I don't think you have like the sustain or tailwind, but you have plenty of tailwind users on your team. I'm sure that's not even a problem for you.
Oh yeah,
So definitely a great trade for you overall.
oh yeah. No, I'm definitely really happy with the pickup. I'm very excited that Zam was willing to trade it to me, and this is the second season in a row we made a trade. Apparently, we like each other's Pokemon, but not enough to not enough to use, or not the ones we actually drafted. So anyways, I guess with that we can move on to number 20, which is you, the Miss Magical Marauders, which I do think you deserve to be above me, just for reference.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I feel like this is roughly about where I should be ranked. Yes, I finally picked up my first win because you know I was ranked a little bit lower in the 20s. I've been kind of hovering here, but I don't think I've proven myself or my squad yet to, I guess, bolster myself higher. And on top of that, I also picked up two new members. I picked up uh, me and Xiao. I exchanged my Hydreigon for it. And then subsequently in Tier 4, I exchanged my Hitmonchan for the Guzzlord that was dropped generously by Rebellion, because this trade would have literally been impossible if they had not dropped it. I'm big fans of these additions, mainly because I realized against the Scraggies that one of, I would say, not necessarily a weak point, but one strength I could really benefit from on a team with this many array of tools is fast fake out. And on top of that, inner focus, which are the things I had in Hitmonchan, and the only difference is me and Xiao was about almost 30 points faster. Not as bulky, but it's a very strong trade-off, and it hits a lot harder. And in exchange, I got Guzzlord for Hydreigon. Doesn't have the strongest immediate offensive presence, and I also lost Levitate, so technically I'm a little bit more ground weak, but it doesn't really matter because Hydreigon's not really switching in for some of my other mons too often anyway. But I loved that Guzzlord has this big HP stat, which is something I really was missing when I got rid of the Wigglytuff in a previous week. So I feel like this kind of rebalances what my team really needed in terms of tool set.
Well, yeah,
But yeah, what do you think?
I definitely am a very big fan of the me and Xiao pickup. I think that, you know, from your first 2 weeks, we saw you very much lean on Hitmonchan. It was one of the key Pokemon on both of those weeks, and it gave you very close. It gave you, you know, it got you very close to be able to win both of those weeks. And if it was a little bit faster or had a little bit more offense, you might have been able to win, and that's what me and Shao gets you. um, I, so I definitely think the me and Shao pickup's really nice. I'm a big fan of Guzzlord in the general sense. I've drafted many times before, and I'm definitely interested in and excited to see you use it. But it's always a mon that I always feels like just barely not what I want in a given week, and so I'm definitely hoping that it gets some work for you. It's like very powerful mon if you can get it in the right situation, and the question is just when you can get in the right situation. But I definitely think your pickups are good, and I think that if nothing else, you should be ahead of me in the power rankings.
Well, thank you for that. I'm excited to see what this squad can do going into week 4.
Yeah. So with that, we can go to number 19, which is the Holisopod Warriors, which, as we mentioned in our video, had a really tough loss to Goomer after having a really tough loss to the Ice Cubes with the double Bright Power miss. So yeah, I don't know. I think I think the big one is that they definitely had some pretty. I think they went 0-2 back-to-back weeks in a row, which is one of the reasons they're a little bit low on the 1-2 teams. But other than that, any thoughts on their season so far, or their ranking, or anything like that?
Yeah, I think that their season these last 2 weeks have just been really rough, and I think a real testament to this team's strength will be how it bounces back. Not even just regarding hacks, quote unquote hacks related strategies or not. I just think generally like how the back to back losses affects the coach's morale, which affects the team's morale overall. And I'd be very curious to see how week 4 plays out for them because I think they're still a strong team. I think they have a lot of strong offensive pieces as well as just combo pieces in general. But maybe something's missing. I know they have a trade pending for week 5 actually, so I won't spoil that. So I'll be curious to see how they use that even in the upcoming weeks. But I think this is about where they should be for 1 and 2 teams.
Oh yeah. One thing I definitely think that one of my complaints for them so far this season, I definitely feel like they've been forcing Reggie Draco a little bit. I think they brought it against Reggie Alecki, not Reggie Alecki, Tapu Koko, the other the other tier 1 electric, Tapu Koko and Clefable this week, especially with Clefable, which you normally expect to have follow me, and so I definitely think they've been maybe kind of forcing it a little more than it should have, and I think that might be one of my complaints with them this season. But also, they've definitely had a little bit of bad luck, and a little bit of kind of playing against some good coaches too.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that I think the Reggie Drago came to a few matchups that on paper it probably shouldn't have. Those are notably matches with strong fairy types like Coco and bulky fairy types and strong ones like Clefable. But at the same time, I think one of the reasons they might feel a little pigeonholed into it is because like you look at this team and it is immediately one of the strongest offensive pieces that they have that does not really require any setup. The Rotom Heat can be made to be pretty bulky and live some hits, but it's like base 87 speed, so it's still kind of slow compared to like the base 100 and up crowd. And then like things like the Tornadus, which are really fast but are also really frail, and Teleon, kind of the same gambit. So I think they feel like they have to bring the Reggie Drago just to threaten a lot of that offensive pressure, like kind of out the gate.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just my perspective, seeing how they're fielding it, because it's like, yeah, you can get rid of this one threat and then like Dragon Energy kind of cleans up in the back, but that on top of the bad luck that they've kind of had in the past 2 weeks just really hasn't been serving it well.
Yeah, fair enough. But definitely looking. I think that their season is definitely looking good despite them being 1-2. But with that, we can head off to number 18, which is the Somerville Scraggies. Personally, I think the Scraggies are underranked. I think they should be higher. One of the higher 1-2 teams. They have had incredibly close matches, and both of their losses, and they've played very well. I think basically most of their losses came down to very like very close games. So what are your thoughts on the ranks and the team?
So I will say this. When I was prepping for this team in week 3, I have to admit I did not really understand this grouping of Pokemon initially, but after actually like really prepping and playing the match, I agree with you. I think they are slightly underranked as far as 1-2 teams go. I think Tyler has drafted a very creative team in terms of the tool set, but I think I also realized that one of the glaring weaknesses of this team is, in some ways, it's Purloin, and it's also some ways one of the greatest strengths this team has. I think the fact that Purloin kind of has to come for him to have fake out pressure really of any kind to get really anything done, in some ways is a little exploitable, especially if you have faster fake out users. That's the one thing. But the second thing I also think is interesting about this team is the Primarina and the Cinderace. You know, they come. I think they've come every week. They and the Cabellion. I think those three have put in a lot of work, and I think those are some of like the highlights of his team. But then like there are just some choices like the Orbeetle, which I don't think we've really seen yet, and I'm not sure if the fan has shown up. Um, I don't recall if Rotom Fan has shown up. I know he brought Boufflant versus me, but it actually never left. It never hit the battlefield. But I still think overall, like his team is strong. It might just benefit from maybe like one slightly faster fake out user, because I feel like there's a lot of weight on Purloin's shoulders. But that's also from the perspective of me approaching this matchup just last week.
No, that's definitely fair enough. I think that them having what's it called inner focus with Alakazam can help a little bit with fake out stuff. But yeah, I definitely think that's a fair criticism. But you know, like I said, I definitely like a lot of their opponents on their team. There's a couple. I think some of the strange mons Tyler specifically mentioned to me that there's a couple mons that they're like I 100% want to try, even if they're not the best. I wanted to run these mons, and I'm like respect that. I understand completely as somebody who picked 11 mons because I wanted to do it.
Right, and I honestly I respect that as well, and I think his abilities as a coach are really lending him well to navigate these strange starts, because like I said, myself, I look at this team and I'm like, what is this team gonna do to me? You know what I mean? Like I think it's very easy to overlook some of those strange mods, and then he capitalizes on you doing that. In fact, he's told me after the game in the game 3 scenario, he told me one of the issues he was having was trying to figure out what move to lock the Cinderace into, because he thought my Heatmore was Flash Fire. So he didn't want to lock it on Pyro Ball and instantly lose the game. If you couldn't touch my Heatmore, I wasn't Flash Fire. Um, but I did the calcs after the game. I'm not even sure if it really mattered, but like it's those kinds of decisions that have led the Scraggies to the 2 losses. So I do think that they will come back strong
hmm
for sure.
I definitely agree, and I'm excited to see them the rest of the season. Up next, we have number 17, which is the Beantown Binacles. Talking about your Hitmonchan, apparently the Beantown Binacles picked up your Hitmonchan. I believe they dropped Surfetched for the Hitmonchan. I think Hitmonchan is a big plus side on their team because I think it's better than Surfetched in the general sense, and I believe, yeah, it's like yeah, and it also gives them intimidate or not intimidate, fake out on a mon that's not incredibly frail, which is also a really big pickup.
Yeah, I'm actually really happy Theo was able to pick up the Hitmonchan. I know he asked me about it like way, I think during Grace even. He asked me about this and like Wigglytuff, but I wasn't looking down the barrel to know what I would need and all that jazz. But I think, like you said, like it fits nicely on this team. You know, he gets fake out, he gets the inner focus. It's a little bit sad that he had to he had to basically blow a trade on the Surfetched for it. Because I also think Surfetched kind of works out nicely here with the scrappy feint usage, which can kind of help since most of his team is very offensive oriented. But just taking a little bit of weight off of the more Pico shoulders, so it doesn't always have to come if he wants to click fake out, I think is a great thing for this team.
Definitely agree. I definitely think that you know The Binacles definitely had a tough loss this last week, and with this new trade, hopefully he can get back in. They were pretty high ranked before this though, and they're getting to the top of the 1-2 ranked teams currently.
Yep. And the other thing that I will say that I really like that the Hitmonchan opens up on this team specifically, it opens up a lot of weakness policy strategies, which is something I originally actually drafted it for myself, was to do like vacuum wave, weakness policy, stack attacker, but I realized in practice positioning those two mons on the battlefield together is not as easy as I would like it to be. But, on a team like this where a lot of Theo's threats are very fast, like they could benefit from like a very quick kind of +2, and then he even has the Whimsicott to augment with the Tailwind. So I think Hitmonchan's gonna do a lot of work on this team, much better than it could have done for me. But you served your job well, so thank you.
So with that, we can go to number 16, which is the Old English Ice Cues. And before we kind of start, we can say they got 4 different trades. So they used all of their trades after this week's loss. So let's see. I know they dropped Haxorus. They dropped Slowking Galar, I think. They dropped Scrafty, and can't remember. And then with that, they picked up the Latias, which was dropped by the Blazikens. They picked up Mimikyu, Steelix, and Mr. Mime Galar. So what are your thoughts of all these trades?
It was the Decidueye, by the way.
Oh yeah, Decidueye. Oh yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, most of the mons I don't think were that big a deal, but Decidueye is definitely a sad loss because I think it was doing a lot of work for their team.
Mm-hmm. First of all, my first reaction to seeing these trades was literally Gert picked up a whole new fantasy core. That was actually my first words, where like he just literally picked up a whole new fantasy core, which I think is really cool for this team in a lot of ways, because I know one of his biggest issues in the early parts of the season was trying to fix that type chart of his. I believe it was very ice weak.
Very weak.
If I'm recalling, it was very ice week, and
no, it was fairy week. That was its problem.
Oh, it was very fairy week. Okay, I thought it was very ice week. Well, I think the trades kind of help out with that. Steelix being a very strong, burly kind of steel type can kind of do a lot of work against those fairies. He also, I don't know if he had he had a psychic type before, but he also kind of redid his sort of fighting psychic dark core with the Mime Galar, added a bit more fake out pressure. That's not just the War Turtle. And 2 additional Trick Room users. I really like the trades, actually. I think they add a lot of more dimensionality to this already bulky team. And, I used Mimikyu last season, often put a terrain seed on it with my Ndidi. Like, it just kind of goes a little stupid with that and some screen support. So, yeah, I'd be curious to see what Gert can do with these guys.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm definitely very curious to see what they do. Just for reference, they don't have a whole new fantasy core. They have another fantasy core. As in, they have 2 fantasy cores on their team, and Latias, Steelix, and Mimikyu, but they also already have Flygon, Lucario, and Tapu Koko.
I didn't even peep that. I was like, wait, he just picked up specific, because usually when people make trades, like they're going for like what they need. So like I just thought, oh well, maybe he just wanted to revitalize his fantasy core. But you're right, he has 2 fantasy cores now. Oh, he doesn't have a Firewater Grass core. That's the one thing he doesn't have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Oh yeah. So like I said, that's one of the big things that I'm a little bit sad, or maybe not sad, but like the big loss I think in their trade is the Decidueye. It was their Grassmon, and I think it was doing a lot of work. I understand that Mimikyu is probably a better ghost Pokemon in the general sense, and so I think that's a fair to want Mimikyu, but I think it's definitely a little sad to not have a Grassmon, just because I think Grass is a good type to have somewhere on the team. But all the Pokemon I think are Pokemon that I value very highly, were picked up. I think that Latias and Latios are definitely Pokemon that are very people underappreciate, because not only do they have are they very fast and have good offensive stats, but they also are just really good support moves in Tailwind, double screens, Mystical Fire, Breaking Swipe, things like that. They can do so much support moves with that, and still, even though Latios is the more offensive one, it is still quite bulky. Um, yeah, but anyway, so that's definitely definitely interested. I'm very curious to see what they're gonna do. It's kind of hard for me to predict where they're gonna be, like how all these are gonna trade, just because their team changed so much because four new Pokemon. But but I think their loss was very close this week, and we put them as one of the higher 1-2 teams.
Mm-hmm.
I guess with that we can go to number 15, which is the MK Mimikyus. The Mimikyus had a pretty tough loss this week, getting their second loss this season. So what is your thoughts on the team or their ranking?
I think this is, again, roughly about where they should be. They haven't made any trade yet, and I don't really think they need to. I think they recognize that a lot of what led to their losses is either playstyle based or even matchup based in some ways, or in some ways just honestly being potentially outplayed. So I think they recognize this, and they're just going to keep sort of refining their strategy before they might reconsider jumping on the trade bandwagon. Because, like you said, there was a lot of activity this weekend, and with the amount of Pokemon exchange, I'm honestly surprised it stopped there. I thought maybe everybody might be looking to replace a member or two, especially as we kind of hit the hat going in towards the halfway point in the season.
Yeah. Definitely. I think their Hatterene NDD core by itself is just terrifying. So does not. I expect good things from them, even though they're 1-2 right now. And I guess with that we can go up to number 14, which is the Georgia Gurchens. So as we mentioned a little bit earlier, the Gurchens traded with me, and they got my Emolga from for their Golbat. So important thing, it's a Pokemon that's not weak to ground, which is one of the big issues they have. I think one of the big things that they want, they like with this, is having a very powerful discharge core with their team. And they have multiple Pokemon they compare with Discord, Discharge, and Disquake. I think that's the big one, is that Mulga with Excadrill is a nice discharge pairing, or where you can do double discharge with that and Pincursion. But what are your thoughts on the team, the pickup, or their rank?
I think just like Golbat worked for you, I think Emolga also did this team a lot of good. Like you said, another ground immunity, great for this team who was struggling with the ground types from the beginning rather, and then the potential with the combos based off the electric mode. But I think really what I like about Emolga on this team is its toolkit. Some of the elements of his toolkit overlap with some of the elements that Rabombi can do, and I think the flexibility of, I don't even know if they've ever brought Rabombi yet. I don't think they have, but I think this just kind of opens it up for a little bit of flexibility in terms of role management, while also complementing your type chart. And I'm very big on, like, let's get multiple mons that can do kind of similar, if not the same role, so we don't feel like if one mon is bad in a matchup, we have to bring it because it's the only one that can do this thing. For example, like on this team, the only mon that can click Fake Out is the Alolan Raichu, which so I don't think really gets Fake Out. Pretty sure it doesn't.
No.
But yeah, I think overall the Emolga trade was a step in the right direction for the Gurchens.
Well, hopefully so. But with that, I think this is the second highest 1-2 team, and so we definitely have some faith in you despite your loss, Zam. And I think like this team was definitely one of the higher ranked preseason teams, and I think it made its couple trades are still it's still looking good. So with that, we can go up to number 13, which is the Polky Dragons. So what are your thoughts?
I would say my first thought is, again, this is kind of like how I view the Mel Battles. I think this is another team that may or may not consider trades after, with all the movement and knowing that there's some things that are on the table again, and certain teams cannot actually go back into FA. I think this is another team that might be looking to do trades sort of as we get in the latter half of this season, just based on, how they've been playing. Maybe they're, filling out their team more. I believe one of their losses was very close. I think it was versus the Pangorials. They had just ended up getting swept by the Azumarill in the third game. So I think overall, like, the coach has definitely proven that these guys can do the work. That Latias set was honestly a thing of beauty to see in action. So we'll just see how they manage kind of going into week number 4.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely think they've been playing very well. They've definitely had very good performances, and I like their team overall. I they're like I have one complaint on their team, which is I don't I I would like them to, or they have a lot of Trick Room Pokemon, but they don't have a very easy way to get Trick Room up, because they don't have like Fake Out, and they don't have like the redirection, or they don't have the bulkiest Trick Room setters. And so I definitely, that's my only complaint about their team, like composition wise. But overall, I definitely think that their team is very powerful and they've been playing well. So with that, we can go up to the top 12, starting with the Rolled Gold Pretzels, which is actually the highest 1-2 team. They had a very close loss to one of the 3-0 teams in Matrix just today. And, they were also one of the higher ranked teams going into week 0 power rankings. So, one of the reasons why they're pretty high up. So what are your thoughts on the team or their ranking?
I think this is where Gumi is probably going to stay until that record sort of starts going up with a little bit more wins. I think this is a perfect spot for him because I agree that the record doesn't speak for itself. He had some really tough 50-50s in all 3 of his games, including the one that he ended up winning, I would say. So it definitely is a pretty strong team that he's drafted. It's just going to be about working out the little kinks in the play style, really, to just go all the way and get those wins as decisively as he did when he beat me
Yeah.
in week 2, is really what I can say.
Oh yeah, I definitely think that you know, uh, I think Gumi's team has been doing some work and they've been playing well, but I definitely would like to for them to get higher. Not only do they need some wins, I think I would like to see them get nice, like, convincing win, because their one win was very close. So so to get up higher, Gumi, you should get a nice win. But overall, you've been doing well, despite saying despite Gumi saying that they were going to win the championship and not want to lose a single set going all the way up to the championship. They're 1-2, so maybe they're a little bit overconfident, but hopefully they can at least, turn their season around. So far they've not had a bad season in the VDL, so we're expecting good rest of the season from them.
I just find it funny with this team in particular, and I think this is one of the only teams out of all 24 you could really say this to, where, like, the record is so variable based on how the sets can play. Like, there's a case for them going 0-3. There's a case for them even going 3-0. There's a case for them being 2-1. Like, that's how their games have been, and I agree with you that they need a convincing win to really start rising in the rankings, because I can sit here and evaluate all of those possibilities, and it's so many variables that don't tell me anything about the coach's play style. It
Yeah.
just tells me that, like, if you made X decision right, then Y might have happened, etc., etc. So you gotta get a 2-0. Come on, Gumi. 2-0 week 4. Let's go.
Sorry for whoever's playing Gumi. Anyways, going
It'll
up,
be fine.
yeah, going up, number 11 is the Coffee and Smokers. So this is one of the 2-1 teams. I personally think that with their convincing win this week, they definitely moved up quite a bit. And I think they look a lot of people kind of can appreciate their coaching skills a little bit more now after seeing like a full set with great plays and a nice strategy. I definitely, uh, you know, yeah, that's all I'll get to say. Any thoughts on him?
I think this is also a prime spot for these guys. Like, they've proven their mettle a bit. We've seen a really solid and commanding, in my opinion, 2-0 win from them, which, counterbalances that sort of awkward in some ways, or let's just say spicy. I think spicy is a nice way to put it. Their spicy week one victory over the Camerups, and I think we can really showcase what this team can do. So we'll see what they can muster up for the remaining weeks, but they do have a pretty strong team. I will
Mm-hmm.
say that much.
So with that, we can go to number 10, which is the Cambridge Camerups. Camerups have done very well since their week one loss. They've been playing quite well and showing their skills. So what are your thoughts?
Squirrely, I'm proud of you, man. Like this is where you should be, and I think you keep with those wins, and as we were saying with Gumi, like the difference between like the wins and the convincing wins is something that a lot of coaches in this division are really taking into account. So I think if he keeps at it, like he's gonna keep doing well. But I do like how the team is performing. There are still some pieces on the team I have to admit I'm not super convinced by, like the Fletchling. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not super convinced by the Fletchling, or even so much the Denny when the Magnezone is kind of there. But we still have a half of a season left, basically. So maybe those pieces will showcase themselves in later weeks.
I don't know. I actually like Dende. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's a big is a nice mod on their team for the tier it has. Just it's 101 base speed with nuzzles and other support moves are really big for their team since they don't have the fastest mons outside of that. And so I think Dende is good. I can understand your statement on Fletchling. It's fine, but it's definitely I think it's better than Shit Ninja, but I don't think which was previously there. But I definitely don't think it's the most impactful mon. But I definitely think they've been playing well, and so far they're the highest ranked VDLS player. So seeing if they can prove that they should have been the champion of the VDLS last season.
Well, I mean, now that you say that, now I really have to come. Me and Rex got to come easing out the gate now. He's
Yeah.
put this whole moniker on all of us that are new to V Create. I see how it is.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly. I'm calling you out personally.
all right. I mean, I got Cambridge in week 6, so
Yeah, yeah.
like
Just
game on.
just went out, nice and easy. Show everyone that you're the best VDLS coach, nice and easy. So, anyways, with that, going up to number ranked 9, we have the Pogging Porygons. Like I said, I think the Pogging Porygons definitely was one of their showcase of their skills as a coach and their team prep. I was very impressed with them this week. Probably the most I've been like, man, they are a very good coach I've seen in my seasons playing them, and I'm definitely excited to see them continue that pathway.
I guess for me, kind of similar thoughts that I had for Squirrely and the Camerups, like OC Frey, keep doing your thing. Playstyle improvements, I think, are even more important than just team roster changes because it showcases the strength of you being able to work with the tools that you have and understand in some ways why you made certain choices at the initial part of the draft. I don't think they've had any trades outside of Grace yet, so they're really working with what they started in week 1, and they've been working it well. 2 wins in a row, so let's see where they're going.
Yeah. So with that, we can go up to number 8, which is the South Cordent Sars. Sars had a very close game 1 win and then pretty convincing game 2 win. They've been playing very well. They had a very impressive win last week against Otto, where they looked like they kind of just slowly like killed Otto, like what's it like by like 1,000 cuts. I think death by 1,000 cuts, basically. Their team has definitely been a lot more bulky and grindy than I was expecting going into the season. Obviously have Toxapex, but for the most part, and they've been playing a very distinct style.
Yeah, I want to thank the Soras in particular because now we have a new term called getting crizzled because of how well this guy has been playing this team, like with the slow and the grinding nature of it, which on its face you might not see that in a lot of ways. Like the support pieces have really been like just hauling behind in making sure this team can do what it wants to do. The Meowstic, the Excelgor, the Toxapex, as well as the offensive threats in the Dracovish, the Archeops. Like, he's. Again, this is one of those teams, like, I look at it on paper and I was like, okay, I see Sand Mode, I see. I don't even see a Trick Room somewhere on this. Oh, there's a Meowstic. I see Sand Mode, I see Trick Room, and I see, like, Prankster. Other than that, I don't see anything that this team is really going to do. And Drizzle is definitely showing us what it can do, and it seems to lead to a lot of timer games. So watch out.
Definitely the case. Yeah. So I don't know. They've been playing well, but I think that might be why they're a little bit ranked lower. Is that they've had a lot of timer games, and people might not watch the entire videos. But anyways, any other thoughts before we move up?
I'm just really curious to see what Crizzle can do with this team going forward, honestly. Because I do think, like, yeah, the timer games might be actually a factor in why people have ranked them so low, but I think it's just an interesting play style to match up against some of the teams that he has actually already defeated, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've been talking so much about, like, coaches' play styles and how certain coaches, like, with, for example, week 3, we had Masenko versus Gurt with two bulky players going at it. I'd be curious to see if he matches up with a coach who has a similar playstyle to the one he's using this team, how well he can basically outplay himself.
Well, definitely agree with that. But with that, we can go to number 7, which are Rebellion. Rebellion, definitely has had an impressive last couple of weeks, but despite that, they decided to make 3 trades. I think 2 of the 3 Pokemon they dropped also got picked up. So they dropped Duraludon, they dropped Guzzlord, and they dropped Kadabra, and they picked up Krokorok, Vanillix, and Poltegeist. So what are your thoughts on the trade?
First of all, thank you for dropping Guzzlord, because my team would have not been better without it, and I'm pretty sure Ems would say the same for the Duraludon just picked up. But I think overall the trades are actually beneficial in a lot of ways to Rebellion. I'm not a big fan of Krokorok personally, but I understand, like, cheap, intimidate, definitely can go a long way, and there's even some light beat up synergy, which I think is probably the other reason I realized that Vanillix is on this team, because he's got some nice weak armor procs for that Poltegeist. We saw some of that when it was on Masenko's team, I believe, in week 1. But, when you have the team centered around, like, the 3 legendary dogs, I think it's important to have these sort of, like, I guess less apparent strategies, like sort of these backdoor strategies, so that people can kind of just get distracted prepping for the 3 dogs and maybe the redirection, and they kind of forget about these little, like, things you can kind of do. And then Zorak just being in there to bluff as anything really on this team really just throws a wrench into all of it, honestly.
Yeah, that's fair. I was gonna say, for reference, one Krokorok, though, as somebody who was going mono dark last season, I definitely was a bigger fan of Scraggy as as the tier 5 Darkmon with Intimidate, because it gets it's notably bulkier and also gets Fake Out in addition to it. But I'm sure the ground coverage is definitely nice. Stab ground coverage is always nice. And and then the electric community as a switch in for a couple of flying Pokemon. But I said, week 0, I think that Rebellion's team was being slept on. I thought the team was very powerful, and I think that people, and I think they've been showing how good their team is.
You know what? Actually, I will agree with you. I think I would like this team even better, like you said, if it was Scraggy in particular. But I can understand, like you said, why they might either want the ground coverage or want something that doesn't necessarily have to hog the Eviolite because you can Scarf Krokorok. I think it's reasonably fast. I remember it was in one of Goomer's like 50 low tier mons you can draft videos, and I remember looking at it. I was like, Trace Scarf on it is really not that bad. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the team is definitely a little bit under represented in what it can do. And I also love the fact that he got rid of the Duraludon because I just honestly think it wasn't doing anything on this team, just adding a ground weakness,
Yeah.
personally.
So, anyways, I guess with that we can go to number 6, which is the Alexandria Arcanines. The Arcanines had a incredibly close week where they just barely scraped guy with a win. Not gonna lie, I think they're slightly overranked. I think they're closer to the. I think they're on the 2-1 teams. I think they're a little bit lower. But they have been. Their team is very good, and they've had some very nice wins. But I think that their win was not as convincing as I would like this week, and and then they had the pretty bad week 1 loss. So I definitely don't rank them as high as some of the other 2-1 teams, but obviously they've been doing very well, and they are a good coach and have a good team.
I think for me, because I actually am facing off against Dan and the Arcanines team, it's sort of the same vibes I got against Tyler. Like I didn't understand really what this assortment of wands like could really do because there weren't, in my opinion, like painfully obvious synergies like a weather mode or that kind of stuff. Or there's like lots of bits and pieces. But I think the one thing that makes me actually rank this team a little bit higher than most is coach strength and how. Again, it's the coach's comfortability and his execution with these mons that you can tell he clearly knows how to use and are maybe a little bit on the sort of the bizarre side that maybe most people will not expect. Like I had to actually look into what Clawitzer did, like other than the fact that I didn't realize it had a really strong special attack stat. Like that's something I learned while prepping for this. So I think that is definitely a bigger carry for them than like the team itself. And I also just really like how like the 5 mons on the left, the Dragapult, the water Urshifu specifically, the Liepard are all weak to Fairy, and then he's got the anti-Fairy core with the Crobat and the Berserker right under it. So I think he's been supported, and then like the other 6 are kind of like randomly good support pieces and can kind of flexibly come in and out to matchups. So I think it's a well-rounded team, driven by a strong coach. What more could you really ask for at rank 6?
Yeah, well, that's fair. So with that, we can go to number 5, which is the Bolden Bashers. The Bashers had a pretty convincing win this week, and also the reigning champion. So no surprise why they're as highly ranked as they are. Obviously, I think the big one is their team has some very strange mons that you normally don't see, including 2 mons that I think who hadn't yet to see play in the VDL until this season. So what are your thoughts on their team or their ranking?
I think this ranking is also perfect. Again, convincing wins, good record, and the team is solid. It is solid both in the amount of sheer bulk that it has, while also wielding that very scary offensive Clefable Spectre mode that you have to respect in prep. And then at the same time, also having a lot of different tools on the mons that are on the team, like the Uxie with the Encore. I didn't even know Uxie got play rough before like this past week. So, that's something I personally just learned. The Electabuzz actually not a bad Eviolite user. The Electro Web and the charge that we saw, I believe, in week either 1 or 2 versus, I think, OC Frey. But yeah, definitely a solid team across the board.
Mm-hmm. So with that, we can go up to number 4, which is the Pangorials. The Pangorials got their first loss this week. They were our week 0, 1, and 2 ranked number 1 team. So it's not too surprising that after their first loss, they're near the top of our, 2-1 teams. So any thoughts?
Yeah, still think their team is solid, and I think this lowering of rank is really just to reflect the fact that their record doesn't match the teams that are slightly higher than them. With well, even the other 2-1 team that spoilers is coming up after this has a slightly better record on game differential, but I think overall they still have a very strong draft and easily, in my opinion, a playoff contending team.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I guess with that we can go up to number three, which is the Trixie Tricos. So first, I think the reason why they're ranked as high as they are is because Otto, the coach of the Trixie Tricos, did not actually rank this week. So, so,
A big
um,
surprise.
yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, Otto has been ranking their team uh completely like unrealistically low. I think they I think that if I was to guess, they probably would have ranked themselves 12th this week. But despite that, the reason why they're ranked high by everyone else is they had a very dominating win against me this week. They've been one of the top, I think two. I think they were the second or third ranked team in week zero power rankings. And then in addition to that, Otto is a two-time VDL champion who has been playing incredibly well.
Yeah, I would agree with those things. I think this is probably like this is one of our, I guess, three best marriages between coach strength and a strong draft. In my opinion, I think it's got enough versatility and flexibility in tools to approach a very wide array of matchups. And clearly, Otto knows how to utilize this team. I don't even remember who the one person he lost to was so far. Oh, it was Crizzle actually.
Yeah.
So, he got Crizzled, but, I guess everybody's going to have to deal with that at some point this season. So, but yeah, definitely strong coach, strong team. I think very worthy of the rank 3 spot.
Yeah. So with that, we can go to our 3-0 teams, starting with number two, the Welsh Waylords. You know, Matrix. So obviously, there's not much reason for the 3-0 teams not to be ranked one and two. The Waylords had a very impressive win this week. It was very close though, and I think that's kind of the big difference between this team and the ranked one team is that they had two close matches and then one convincing match in their three wins, and the ranked one team had three convincing wins.
Yeah, definitely big agree on the sort of convincing versus the non-convincing wins to differentiate between the rank 2 and the rank 1 spot. For me personally, I also think compared to the rank 1 team, I do think this team it's just a little bit more linear, specifically because it has the two weather modes. I mean, I really love how he still threw in the Arctozol, versus the pretzels, just to again respect that Northern a little bit more. But I think that makes it a little bit in some ways easier to prep for. Like you just know that you're going to face weather and you can kind of plan a little bit accordingly. But I still think it's a strong team and very much worthy of rank number 2.
Okay, I personally I like this team, just the team itself, better than the ranked one team, but I personally rank them two because going to number one, we have Tyrannosauces, who are not only 3-0, they are also +6, which means they have yet to drop a game, which, it's pretty hard to beat that.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I personally like this team a bit better than Matrix's. I think again, it's that combination of strong offensive and supportive pieces coupled with some unfamiliar mons that can really, really kind of make prepping against these mons very difficult. Like, if you told me as putting myself in like the Melmetal's shoes that I would be facing off against Fling +1 defense, weakness policy stored, rest talk Cresselia, I probably would have just laughed in your face. I'm gonna be real honest. Like I would have never even seen that coming, just looking at these mons kind of like on a spreadsheet, And I think that's something that the sauces can really capitalize on in a way that Matrix and his Waylords, like, yeah, you gotta prepare for like the two distinct weather modes and kind of make sure you have everything else covered. But here, I don't even know, man. Like, there's a force on this team that's like threat numero public enemy number one. So it's just I really like what Saki's doing with this array of Pokemon this season.
Oh yeah, no,
I
what?
think he's definitely earned the number one spot.
Oh, I definitely agree. They definitely earned the number one spot. One thing that going into the season, I was concerned that the team seemed like it might be a little bit dependent on the Thunderous, but their team has not been dependent on it at all. Cresselia has been amazing. Um, Golurk has been very good. You know, even some things like not Corfish, big Corfish,
Crawdon.
Crawdon, Crawdon. Like all these mons have just been done a lot of work, and that you know wouldn't that I definitely was expecting to not be as convincingly powerful as they've been. But you know, Saki's a great coach, and they have a very great start. So with that, I guess we can go to you know, I guess anything else on this team.
No, I'm just really, like I said earlier, really interested to see how long this streak of both undefeated in weeks and also undefeated in sets really continues, because I actually really like this team and I really like how Saki is using it.
Uh, I definitely agree. And here is our final rankings of all the teams. You know, as per usual, like I said, this week definitely I felt like we're a little bit leaning on the records overall because you know how close a lot of these teams are. Any final thoughts on any of the rankings or any of the teams or anything?
I think at this point in the season, as we move into the halfway point, where in some cases we'll be at the very sort of brink of make it or break it for at least one team for playoffs, mostly the Brisbane Blazikens. If they lose another week, they basically have to win out to have a shot. I think for everyone else, that's when we'll really start seeing some larger shifts in the rankings. But I think this is pretty appropriate after a tough 3 weeks across the board.
Yeah, definitely a tough 3 weeks. So I guess with that, that is the end of our week 3 power rankings. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I guess that's all.